started. Thank you guys for being so patient. Let's go ahead and jump right in. So let's start with some introductions. My name is Brianna Fischer. I work on the Cloud Solutions Marketing team here at Veritas. We're also joined by my colleague and partner in crime on the Cloud Solutions Marketing team, Mr. Anthony Cusimano.
Hello again.
Say hi, Anthony.
Hi, Anthony.
All right. Before we dive into our cloud content, a couple of housekeeping items. First things first, if you've opted in for today's special offer of the $20 Uber Eats e-gift card, all you have to do is hang out with us, myself and Anthony Cusimano, for 45 minutes while we talk all things cloud and have a fun session. Once the session has wrapped, you will receive an email with your voucher that you can redeem in the next 24 hours. So I think that sounds like a good plan. You get to hang out with us for 45 minutes, and then you get $20 Uber Eats e-gift card. That sounds awesome. Also, if you do have questions, some of you are already using the chat box, which is awesome. Please feel free to drop us any questions. We're going to try and address them throughout the presentation. If we don't address them throughout the presentation, we'll try to get to them at the end. If for some reason your question is not answered, we will reach out to you after. So please just pile them in there. We'll do our best to address all of them. But if we can't get to them, we'll be sure to answer them after the webinar. And if your first question is, Brianna, is that a framed picture of your dog? It is a framed picture of my dog. I'm so glad that you asked. Normally, I was working at my kitchen table and it was hanging behind me. I have now reclaimed my desk now that my boyfriend's out of the house working at his office, which is nice. But I thought I had to share it because other viewers have gotten to see it. And, you know, who doesn't love a framed picture of a dog? Anthony, anything to add before we jump into our cloud content?
I have like a cool light up keyboard over there. I mean, that's all I got going for me. I say we jump in.
All right, let's dive into the good stuff. We're going to jump in. So today we're talking all things hybrid multi-cloud and how you can optimize or start your journey and your strategy to achieving your hybrid multi-cloud, whatever that looks like for you and your business. So to set the stage, we're first going to talk about some data points of research that we've done over the past couple of years to really set the stage for why this is an important topic and why we're covering it. So to start us off, Anthony, talk to me about this 175 zettabytes of data. That sounds like a lot. What are we talking about here?
So this number is so huge. I made some fun comparisons about it. But if you've ever come to one of our conferences on the state side, or maybe we've even done some of the conferences out your way, you'll see our hosts give presentations about how if you took this and put it into a cell phone, like I think it's a 256 gigabyte cell phone, an iPhone Max S something or other, and stacked it on top of each other, it would circle the planet 72 times. So it's like stacking them flat ways. But that even itself doesn't tell us how tremendously large this number is. This number is just growing out of control when you think about what that represents for the enterprise, what it represents for mid-market, what it represents for even the consumer. There is so much data. There is just billions of bits of data in here that represent profit for your company, potential dangers or security loopholes for ransomware to get in, marketable material you've never even thought about. There's so much value and risk inside this number. And we understand that not everyone zettabytes to this. They could just be terabytes or petabytes, but it all adds up. And where we're going, there has to be a better way to contain and manage this kind of data in this kind of scale.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head where there's a lot of value, but there's also a lot of potential risk associated with this growing amount of data. Now, growing data has to live somewhere. So sometimes it's on-prem, sometimes it's in the cloud, sometimes it's in multiple clouds. So talk to me about this 50% number and how it pertains to cloud and why it's important.
So I'm always curious, feel free to put in the chat or in the Q&A what your participation rate is, but we've actually done a study. It's our Truth in Cloud report, and as part of that report, we interviewed over 1,500 folks all across the planet, and over 50% of the folks we interviewed said that they were at least half of their organization was in the cloud as of today, and we ran that in late 2019, December 2019 is when we got those statistics and results. So 50% of all the 1,500 interviewees had half their organization in the cloud. That's tremendous. That represents a confidence and an acceptance and willingness to adopt the cloud as at least half of your primary technology stack. And based on our polling, that number is not going to get smaller. It's actually going to grow bigger, and the adoption is just going to become larger overall.
Yeah, and one quick thing, Anthony, just to ad-lib for a second here, with everything going on in the world right now, how have we seen an uptick in cloud usage? I feel like now more than ever, people at home are relying on cloud services. Can you just talk to that for just like a quick second? Because I know you and I have talked about that a little bit, about the trends that we've seen. What are your thoughts on that?
It's a great question, great call out. Well, if you think about it, the convenience factor is here more now than ever. Stateside, a lot of us are working from home. Brianna and myself have both been working from home for the last few months. The real luxury of the cloud is you don't have to go into a physical data center and turn on machines anymore. You don't have to have any physical interaction with those machines at all. It's all provided through an interface. You can spin up anything that you need in a moment's notice at a location anywhere in the world. So whether you're in sunny Florida, California, Dubai, India, Australia, you can access the cloud from anywhere, share that access with your entire global team, and not have to leave your chair or your home. It's very convenient, and I would expect the uptick of adoption to go up even more because of the situations that we're in now.
Yeah, absolutely. And so kind of leading into our next stat that we want to cover, the cloud, there's a lot of great things about the cloud. However, that comes with certain responsibilities. So talk to me a little about this 84% statistic when it comes to cloud and maintaining data and maintenance of whatever you're keeping in there.
It's like Ben Parker told young Spider-Man, with great power comes responsibility. And unfortunately, the number is not a good one. So based on that research I talked about earlier from our Truth in Cloud report, 84% of the 1,500 respondents, it's over 1,000 people, responded. And these are people with cloud architect in their title. They responded with, they thought the cloud provider, that would be AWS, Azure, Google Cloud Platform, was responsible for protecting and backing up their data. They believed it was automatically being handled for them by the cloud service provider, which is a striking response because that is not correct. It's actually a little worrisome. Out of those 84 respondents, 84%, they all believed that they were somehow automatically protected in some way, shape, or form by the CSP, and that is just not true at all.
Yeah, and that number is a little terrifying. And I want to just for a second talk about why this is so scary, because we ran this report back in 2017, I believe, where it wasn't the exact same report, but it had a similar feel to it. So Anthony, talk to me about this number juxtaposed with the number back in 2017 and why this is so striking.
So we've been talking about the Truth in Cloud 2019 report, which you can find on our website if you search for it. But in 2017, we had a very similar study, asked this same exact question to roughly about the same size audience. And the response was that only 46% thought that the cloud service provider was responsible for protecting and backing up their data. So asking the same type of people the same question produced a worse result 3 years later, which is just a little bit frightening overall. And we know that the adoption has gone up too. So we can only assume that this number maintains fairly true for just the entire cloud user base out there today.
Absolutely. And I think because of that, because of our Truth in Cloud report, which if you're curious on diving in more, this is a very surface level kind of talk about the Truth in Cloud. If you go to veritas.com/cloud, you can find the full Truth in Cloud report that you can download. Anthony and I have also been working on a lot of content around EULAs, end user license agreements. It's not a lot of people's fault that they don't understand where responsibility lies, and that's why we're here to help you understand where your responsibility starts and where the CSP's responsibility ends, and vice versa. So there's a lot of great content around end user license agreements that have just been published. We've written numerous blogs that you guys can check out, so that's all on our website. Feel free to peruse at your leisure, but a lot of great content and information in there. So Anthony, thanks for helping me go through those stats. Let's dive into now hybrid multi-cloud and what that means. So we've talked about the fact that data is growing at an unprecedented rate. There's a ton of data in the world. There's a lot of different places you can put that data, and there's misconceptions about whose responsibility is to maintain, protect, make sure it's highly available. There's just some misconceptions around that. So this all kind of ties into the fact that our world is complex, and we're here to help you defy that complexity. So when we talk about your hybrid multi-cloud strategy, we tell the story in terms of a journey to Mars. So let's just say for a second, put your imagination caps on and be a kid with me for a second. When you talk about a journey to Mars, let's say you as an individual were going to make that journey. First things first, you're going to need a rocket. Either you're going to have to build one, steal one from your neighbor, however you can get a rocket, that's what you're going to need to do. When you get that rocket, you're going to want to fill it with all the things you're going to need for that journey. Not only the journey there, but whatever you're going to need when you land in your desired end state, which in this case is Mars. So you'll want to fill it with things like tools, food, space helmet, just only the essentials. However, there's limited space on your rocket, and rocket fuel is extremely expensive. So you'll want to be thoughtful about what you're stocking your rocket with. Once you've loaded your rocket, you will then launch off into space and make that journey. You're going to want to consider how quickly do you need to get there? Do you have enough fuel? There's a lot of considerations in your travel section. And then once you actually land in your desired end state or on Mars, you're going to want to make sure that you can set up camp, you can protect what you brought with you, and stay highly resilient in the face of whatever happens to live or happening on Mars. Now, when you take that story and you consider how that fits in with a hybrid multi-cloud strategy, it actually fits in more closely than you might be thinking. So let's talk about phase one and stocking your rocket and preparing your rocket. So in this case, with your hybrid multi-cloud strategy, you're going to want to fill that rocket with things like data and infrastructure. Like I said, there's limited space, rocket fuel is expensive. You want to make sure you're being thoughtful about what you're putting on that rocket. When it comes to your data, you want to know what data you have, where it lives, what potential risk or benefit it brings. You do not want to bring rot data, redundant, obsolete, or trivial data with you to the cloud. You don't want to pay to store garbage. If you need to find a specific document or sensitive information, you don't want to have to dig through all of the crap, for lack of a better word, to get to what you need. So you want to be thoughtful about data. When it comes to infrastructure, often there's a lot of silos in your infrastructure. You want to break those down. You want to make sure that you're getting a full 360 view about what's happening in that infrastructure. So really this phase is all about optimizing your decision-making of what you're going to move and how you're going to move it. So once you have that all figured out, we then move to migrate. During migration, you can migrate a piece of your data center, the entire data center, one cluster of applications, whatever you want. But the main considerations are speed and uptime. How quickly do you need to get to where you're going, and what are the uptime targets that you need to hit? And really, this is all about being flexible in migrating to, from, and in between various clouds and on-prem. All right, so we've prepared, we've migrated, and now we've landed, hopefully, in our desired end state, which in this case is the cloud. You could have landed on the AWS home base, the Azure Biodome, the Crater Colony that you carved out for yourself. And really that's speaking to the hybrid multi-cloud nature of our story. It doesn't matter where your data and your workloads and your infrastructure resides. The point is you make sure it's all protected and highly resilient. This is also the phase at which you'll want to look at if you have any point products in your environment that might be hindering your ability to really optimize your hybrid multi-cloud strategy. So standardizing on a platform can really help you in that case. So that was very long-winded. That is our hybrid multi-cloud story in the context of a journey to Mars. But don't worry, we're going to break down each section and kind of talk through what we mean by prepare, migrate, and protect. And then there's a fourth phase that we're going to be talking about, and we will unveil that a little bit later. But that is the step that really brings our story full circle. So the important question to ask yourselves right now is, where is your hybrid multi-cloud strategy today? You could be in any one of these places right now. You could be in the very beginning, deciding what capacity you want to operate in the cloud. You could be in the middle of migration to, from, or in between various clouds. Or you could already be deployed in the cloud and you're trying to optimize on your current strategy. Wherever you are, Veritas can help you. We're going to tell the story in a linear fashion, but just know that you can fall under any one of these buckets at any time, and that's okay. So Anthony, let's go ahead and kick it off. Let's start with prepare.
Let's do it.
This is really focused on, do you actually know what's in your data center when it comes to your data and your infrastructure? So let's talk about some challenges that might be hindering your ability to really harness your data and your infrastructure to the best of your ability. So what are we talking about here?
So you set it up great with the rocket analogy and the story, and I'm sure as folks start to look at the screen, they can figure a lot of this out for themselves. Obviously, just like with a rocket going to Mars, the preparation part of the journey is knowing all about what you have, what you need, and what you're going to need along the way. So as our little bullets point out here, data is dispersed across infrastructure. This is true. It's true of the enterprise. It's true in the mid-market. It's true in my own living situation here. We have data everywhere, and it is impossible for one single person, let alone an entire IT team or even a business, to be able to manage and understand all of it. It is just an impossibility. We think about that 186 terabyte number or a zettabyte number. Even if we had 100 gigabytes, it would be hard to know what all of those data points represented. And you mentioned, Bray, the rot data, redundant, obsolete, trivial data. All of the people we interviewed for our Truth in Cloud report mentioned having some form of this in their environment and having, not sure how to deal with it or just kind of let it lie, let it live where it is. And there's some serious risk to doing that. And that risk comes in the form of compliance and regulations. We hear about GDPR, we hear about the California Privacy Act. There's plenty of regulations out there, and I'm sure there'll be plenty more next year. And each one has their own little niche rule set that you have to follow if you're going to operate and do business in these geolocations. And if you have that redundant, obsolete, trivial data and don't know what's in it or what it does, chances are some of it is non-compliant, and that could mean fines for you. Now, when we talk about lack of workload interoperability, we're really talking about understanding the infrastructure and the applications that you have today and what you're actually going to need at that secondary location in the cloud. And when we talk about cross-site and cloud infrastructure parity, that really just means, can I get the same level of performance and output in the cloud that I had on-prem? I bet all of y'all think the answer is yes, but we have found in many cases that something does change, something is different there. In the next slide.
Yep. Yeah, we wouldn't present challenges and not give you, a way to take care of them. So let's dive into what is the Veritas approach? What are we providing? Yeah, that would be kind of rude, right? So let's talk about how you can approach this from a strategic point of view. So when it comes to Veritas, how can we help you when it comes to preparing and really taking on your data and your infrastructure? So first things first, actionable insight into data and resources across your heterogeneous environment. Look, understanding what data you have, where it lives, and what potential risk or benefit it brings, that is extremely key, but that's only a first step. Being able to take action on that data is by far equally, if not more important than just finding the data itself. So we mentioned raw data, we mentioned sensitive data, the ability to delete things out of your environment, the ability to move it on a dime. Those are really important things, especially when it comes to your hybrid multi-cloud strategy. All right, talking about end-to-end agnostic view into any storage, any cloud, and any backup. This is speaking to your environment, your infrastructure, really getting that 360 view into everything going on in your infrastructure. And then last but not least, the ability to optimize your data center with unprotected data discovery. It's extremely important. We know that data protection is a key part of any sound strategy. So if you have unprotected data in your environment, you want to make sure that you point it out and you take care of it as soon as possible. Now, this is a very kind of high-level air cover of what we're providing in this specific bucket. So Anthony, what I want to do now is just very quickly, this isn't meant to be a product pitch. This is really just kind of a high-level overview. But for those of you who are familiar with Veritas products, I want to kind of name drop some of the things in the Veritas Enterprise Data Services platform that support the different features and functionality that we've called out here. So Anthony, can you just give like a quick high level of what products within EDSP support these different bullet points?
We're talking about Aptar when we're talking about our preparation approach. And for those that aren't aware, Aptar is actually a solution that we acquired over, I think it's 2 years ago now. But the solution itself is amazing. Back when I was out in the field running demos, I used to be an SE before I was in marketing. It was one of my absolute favorite products to demo because it just shows incredible value that it brings. With Aptar, the name of the game is really understanding and solving for all of those challenges we talked about on the previous slide, really getting to know what is in your infrastructure. If you have one site or many sites, plugging Aptar in and setting it up correctly. And I do invite you to go to our veritas.com/cloud page to actually see a demo of us running this product. But it allows you to get not only an inventory view of every single hardware item you have, from computational resources to network devices to storage arrays to even cloud resources as well, including Amazon and Azure resources. So you can see all of your compute instances as well as S3 storage usage. Everything that you use is represented there. But you can also create alerts for high, low watermark, reporting thresholds as far as what's behaving properly, what might be acting squirrely, and also assign things like cost and value and understand how much each business unit in your organization is using on all of these disparate hardware resources. Using an analytics tool like Aptar and plugging it into your environment can really give you the kind of view that you never thought you could have before without plugging in dozens information with each individual native platform. We plug into a lot of different things, including even some of our competitors. And interestingly enough, we can even show you what backup or what lack of backup on very hardware and information inside your infrastructure. So you can see exactly what you would need to protect and what is missing from the equation.
Yeah. And I think that some people think that we're joking when we say that we can see into competitors, and it is true. So like Anthony mentioned, I invite you to check out Aptar and really check out what it has to offer, because it really does report on things beyond just Veritas tools. Anthony, we have a quick question in the chat. It says, and this might be something we need to take offline for a more in-depth answer, but just to kind of give a nod, it says, how about when compliance is double-edged? For example, you might have to maintain records for 7 years, but potential new regulations mean that some of that might be subject to new fines, yet you don't want to wade through all the terabytes of crap to weed out the data that you shouldn't keep and still maintain the records. So I'm going to say that this is all about tagging your data and understanding what you have and being vigilant about tagging it. But Anthony, what's your take on this?
So this to me really reads of being able to expunge and filter out rather than delete entirely. So having the ability to go through and classify the information inside your infrastructure, identify risky points, things like personally identifiable information, social security numbers, things like that. We can help you identify those data points and even help you come up with a plan to expunge them without expunging the entire data set in all. Because you're absolutely correct. It's a great question. You do, for a lot of regulations, have to hold on to this data for 7 years. But redacting things that, let's say a GDPR comes in, I want to remove my information from a business, you're allowed to redact without removing that entire data set.
Yeah. And Aaron, you asked the question, if you want a more in-depth answer, which you might, reach out, let us know. We're happy to take this offline and address it in more detail. All right, so let's move forward to migration. So the question on the mind here is, how do you move your data and your infrastructure, and how do you do it in a timely manner? So once again, Anthony, can you tee up some of the challenges for us of why people might be struggling to do this today?
Absolutely. So with migration, the name of the game is speed and efficiency, as you could probably figure out. Being able to move a lot of things from over here to a lot of space over there, it takes time, it takes resources, and it also takes effort of the folks moving those things. So we want to make sure that when you pair appropriate workloads with the right infrastructure, you really identify, and this kind of falls back into the preparation phase, exactly what you need and exactly what you want. It's always important to start with the end in mind when it comes to these kind of projects. Moving applications while maintaining. This is a big one for a lot of financial institutions, healthcare institutions, folks that have to always be on. They want to move resources and assets to the cloud, but would have to come up with some kind of on-off way to do so because they cannot have those applications or infrastructures go down for any time whatsoever. So coming up with a native and intuitive way to do that without interrupting business is crucial for these folks. The underlying infrastructure complexities and dispersion, again, it's the problem of having too much in too many different places. Being able to actually identify what you need at that secondary location and how to make the most of it, it's going to be critical for the move. And it's also going to help you free up bandwidth and the ability to move things that actually matter. And lastly, workload performance and uptime consistency during migration. We talked about this a little bit with bullet point 2. And the truth of the matter is you have to have a solution that meets the SLA that you need. Not everyone needs, 0.001 millisecond downtime for every single application in their infrastructure stack. Some folks can get away with 5 minutes, some folks can get away with 5 hours. But understanding what you have, what you need, and how to maintain it is key for any kind of move, whether it's on-prem to cloud, cloud to on-prem, or anywhere to anywhere.
Yep, great call out. All right, so when it comes to Veritas, how are we helping you with your migration approach? So first things first, you want to optimize data placement according to cost and control requirements. As we know, not everything is meant to be in the cloud. Some people might choose to keep things on-prem for various reasons. Again, that could be cost or control. Some things absolutely should be in the cloud for those exact reasons. So just taking stock of what you have, where you want it to go, and for whatever reason that might be. So that's huge. Second, mission critical levels of availability and performance during data and workload migration. Anthony kind of already touched on this, but if you have those mission critical applications that cannot experience any downtime, you have to ensure that when you're migrating them, that it's not going to impact your customers. Moving down the list, efficiently migrate a slice or the entire data center. So again, whatever you want to move, it could be a piece of the data center, the entire thing, one cluster of applications, but pairing the right workloads with the right infrastructure and determining what your SLAs need to be is a big consideration for migration. And last but not least, might be my favorite thing to talk about, Anthony knows this, complete migration testing through rehearsals with tiered out end-to-end orchestration. So if you're planning a big cloud migration, or even if it's not a big cloud migration, even if it's just you're migrating one cluster of applications, you want to know with confidence that when it comes time to push that big red button and to start the migration process, that nothing is going to break along the way. And so that's kind of where this rehearsal and migration testing comes in, making sure that your strategy is sound and that nothing is going to break along the way and customers aren't going to be upset with you because applications aren't working. That is huge. So Anthony, just like we did for the first section, can you talk about the products in the EDSP platform that really address the migration needs that we've outlined in this list?
Absolutely can do. So we're really talking about two specific products here, both of which are focused at the migration and availability of data, and that is the Veritas Resiliency Platform and Veritas Infoscale. I'll start with Resiliency Platform first. This is another one like Aptar. It is just one of my absolute favorite products in our portfolio because it's super cool. It's another one of our newer releases, and it's got a great intuitive UI for what's going on. But essentially, highest level, what it allows you to do is to encapsulate and understand your infrastructure at point A, and then effectively automate its entire move, including the standing up and powering on and orchestration of all those assets at site B. So whether you are 0% or 50% or 75% along the way to the cloud journey, chances are there has been some manual steps along that way. The Veritas Resiliency Platform can help not only remove those manual steps, but make everything fairly seamless to get there. Like you mentioned, how your favorite aspect was that rehearsals capability. It's probably mine as well. What it allows you to do is spin up a fenced off network using a custom set of subnet IP addresses at the secondary location. So every bit of migrated resource that you've taken there. So if you had 50 VMs on-prem and you've migrated a good chunk of those 50, you can spin segregated fenced off network and run all your order of operations, including powering on, custom scripting, connections, any kind of application layer connections that have to occur, and see exactly what you would have when you click that migration button without interrupting any of your business logic happening in your primary location. So when it actually does come time to click that button, there's zero surprises along the way. Now, real quick, our second solution we're talking about is Infoscale. Now, some of you who are familiar with our portfolio might be aware of cluster file server, Storage Foundation. We had a whole bevy of products in the early 90s when I was a child. They've all been consolidated into what is now known as Infoscale Enterprise today. And really, Infoscale's name of the game is high availability, high uptime, zero downtime solution. So it's a much harder hitting version of what we were talking about with VRP, but it's also much more targeted. So when we're talking about an Oracle cluster that cannot go down, it's part of a financial institution's transactional database, Infoscale can allow you to seamlessly go with as few as a millisecond of downtime. And we can also enable synchronous replication, so you don't lose any bits along the way if there is something like a network hiccup or an outage or something a little more dangerous than that. It's truly the heaviest hitting solution when it comes to the highest level of availability that a company can need for their most business critical applications.
Yeah, and one thing that I want to address before we move on, because I feel like we get this question a lot, so we might as well just get out of the way, is VRP and Infoscale, while they are very different, they do share similar functionality. So can you just real quick go over in what scenario, and you kind of did, but just to bring the point home, when would you use VRP and when would you use Infoscale? Because we do get this question a lot, so I just want to hit it on the head before we move on.
We do, and it's kind of a square rectangle situation. So with Infoscale, I would always recommend it's focused at a smaller slice of business critical infrastructure, because it is very targeted at what it does. It is very honed in on that application or server layer. So when you need high uptime, it's targeted at a few, 10 servers max, or a cluster of applications. It's all interconnected. That's the Infoscale way. When you're looking at something larger, 50 to 1,000 VMs that you want to migrate or have some kind of failover plan for, either whether it's on-prem to cloud, virtual to cloud, cloud to cloud, that's when Veritas Resiliency Platform, or VRP, comes in. Now, the good news is if both of those sound appetizing, you can actually manage both from the Veritas Resiliency Platform and use Infoscale as a data mover within that. So you can even do targeted slice of business critical applications through Infoscale, and then your test dev, QA, and business as normal resources going through the resiliency platform. There's still a 5-minute window for downtime with VRP, and we can minimize that further with Infoscale.
That's awesome. Thank you for clearing that up. I know we get that question a lot, so I'm sure some people that are on this webinar are thinking that right now. Might as well just address it while you guys are thinking it. All right, and our cool little animation here, this, I forgot to click it, but when you're talking about, when you're talking about speed and uptime, the point is, do you need one rocket to get you where you're going? Do you need, your rocket plus an extra booster on the side to get you there faster? So this is the one animation that we did keep in the deck. This whole deck can be animated, but it obviously doesn't show very well over WebEx, but that is the one animation we wanted to keep in there because it's just kind of cool. All right, so moving on to our third pillar, which is protect. The question here is, can you recover from anywhere? And this is key now more than ever today, I would argue, with things like ransomware, people in your environment, just being able to have a sound data protection strategy to be able to recover at any point in time to anywhere from anywhere is something we all need. So Anthony, once again, take it away. Talk to me about some of the challenges.
Absolutely. So when we're talking about the challenges of protection, we're really hitting into that 84% and what they got wrong in the survey. So these folks are aware of the situation that they're in. And starting with the big one up top, the lack of confidence that a single product can meet business needs. This one strikes close to home because I understand this as a consumer. A lot of times you don't want to put all your eggs in a single basket because that single basket can fall and crack all the eggs. There's a real concern and fear that, as an enterprise, as an organization, you want to have just point products down the line for every single application and data piece inside your infrastructure. And there is some logic and security to that, but there's also a better way, and we'll talk about that on the next slide. So our second one is fear of consolidation on a single platform with vendor lock-in. And this one is dangerous. With some vendors out there, when you put your data or your eggs into their basket, I don't know why I'm so fixated on eggs. This is a space presentation. When you put your asteroids into their rocket, you do run the risk of not being able to get your asteroids out of that rocket if they have some kind of encryption or service that doesn't allow you to pull back out. Let's say if you want to leave their licensing model or leave their application entirely. So there is definitely a challenge and a risk there. The inability to instantly fail over during an outage. So this one kind of ties into something we were talking about in the previous session, but not in the migration aspect, just in the living, functioning business aspect. Can my business stay afloat in the cloud, on-prem, wherever it needs to, 24/7, no downtime, no questions asked? And I think if you listen to the last section, you already know the answer to that question. So need the ability to recover to any location or infrastructure. And this one's important as well. A lot of folks today have found that through adopting the cloud, they've kind of ushered in a whole new bevy of problems. These clouds are not 100% on 100% of the time, and it's not even as a total service, it's very regional. You can have a network outage, and I'm going to use American terms. I'm sorry, I don't know enough about Australian cities. And you can have an outage in our Virginia data center that doesn't impact the rest of the planet, but the folks using those Virginia data centers in these specific clouds could go down and experience severe downtime and not know what's going on. It does happen, it's scary, and they do need a way to be able to handle and deal with these kind of situations.
Yeah, and to your point, Anthony, I think there's a notion that the cloud is indestructible and it's never going to go down, and whatever I put in there is automatically protected and safe, and uptime targets are going to be hit. And I think that, the cloud is just a bunch of servers and computers somewhere else, and stuff does go wrong. It does happen. It's less likely than other scenarios, but it does happen. And Anthony, I think you wrote a blog about it, about severe downtime that was affected by that Virginia data center that went down. And so if you do a quick search for cloud outages, there's a lot of research out there that you can find of things that have happened. So unfortunately, they are human too. It does go down, but there's a notion that it's kind of indestructible and that it just doesn't happen. But that's not the case, and that is why we're talking to you today, to make sure that we are addressing those things head on, and it does happen. So. All right, let's move on to the protect approach. Now, I want to caveat this with each of these sections could have their own webinars that we could go into an hour's worth of content under each of these things. We're giving you just a little taste of each of these sections. So when it comes to protect, this is obviously the bread and butter of what Veritas does. It's what we're known for. Again, we could have an hour-long presentation on just our protect pillar, but we're going to kind of graze over this. If you'd like to know more, please let us know in the questions. But when it comes to protection, first is near zero downtime for mission critical workloads. We kind of already touched on this on migration, but if you have mission critical applications that your customers need to access 24/7, they cannot go down. No matter what happens in the cloud, no matter what happens on-prem, you need to make sure that that is indestructible for your users and your applications and your data. When it comes to efficient centralized backup and recovery, again, you want a sound backup and recovery strategy. You cannot have that fail you in the 11th hour when you need it most. All right, adjusting protection levels according to service size and speed, making sure that, not all things are created equal. Not everything needs to be protected in the same way. So making sure that you're taking stock in those different things and protecting accordingly. And then last but not least, ensuring data is protected and recoverable to anywhere from anywhere. So that is huge. We want to make sure that no matter where your data is sitting, if something happens, you can fail over and be up and running anywhere else. So that is huge. Anthony, once again, in our last pillar, let's talk about the different products in the Veritas Enterprise Data Services platform that support our protect approach pillar.
Yes, so we've already talked a bit about Infoscale in the migration section. So we're not going to hit too hard on that. What I'll just say is in an extension to migrating data and ensuring the data stays up during that migration phase, like we talked about, when clouds go down or when your local data center goes down or wherever your data is, it goes down. Infoscale can resiliently keep that data alive from location to location and even from server to server or operating system to operating system. We've actually had some really cool instances of where some of our customers have used Infoscale to even fail over from a local physical Solaris server to a Linux server running in AWS. Like it is pure magic when it comes to the ability to do some impressive level of near zero downtime failover of business critical applications for our customers. So it's an important way to stay alive when you need that highest availability possible. And the second solution we're talking about, I'm sure the majority of you all here know us for this one. This is our bread and butter. It's Netbackup. And for those who haven't seen the product recently, Netbackup has really taken on an entire new coat of paint, not just from a visual perspective, but also an interface perspective. We've added some 250 API commands as well as an entire new interface. So folks really have the pick of the litter as far as how you want to interface with the product. But we've also added a bunch of proliferations and ways to protect data, both physical, virtual, and cloud. And we've added a whole bunch of automation and compression ability as well to ensure that, one, you don't have to spend a lot of time poking around in the interface, even though it is slicker and newer. You don't have to spend time there learning how to do it. We can set up automated policies that can automatically protect the new workloads as they come in and make sure that everything is handled from our end so you don't have to. And secondly, as I mentioned before, compression. We've really hit a stride as far as our ability to deduplicate and make sure that when we take data from on-premises or data that's in the cloud, we can shrink it down to its smallest unique form. We call it deduplication, and ensure that that data footprint stays that way in transit. So if you have a terabyte of data on premises that can be compressed down to 100 gigabytes, we can maintain that 100 gigabytes as it goes across the wire into something like Amazon S3 storage, or even into like a Glacier store for long-term retention. So it keeps the WAN free, keeps your network free, it's fast, and it's really able to work at a level that we've never been able to see before. So it's very impressive from that regard. And it's truly become the backbone of what is our enterprise data services platform for our company. Netbackup has become almost the orchestration engine for everything it is that we do when it comes to protection. So handling things like ransomware, or even being able to tie into the Veritas resiliency platform and provide disaster recovery copies. It's all there and it's all impressive. And I can't say enough things because there's so many things it does now on this call, but it has become a tour de force for both physical, virtual, and cloud-based workloads when it comes to protection.
Absolutely. And just real quick, Anthony, we do have another question from Herman. He said, and this, again, might need to be taken offline because we're not the product people for Netbackup, but the question is, what is the roadmap for Netbackup backing up AWS EC2 or Azure IaaS VMs without the need for a client? So, Anthony, I'm not sure if you have any insight into this or we need to loop in a product manager to help address this question, but what are your thoughts here?
We should, and I'm going to try to be very careful about what I say because I know things, and I'm not going to say everything I know. But if I wink enough at the camera, maybe you can wink along with me. So today, if you want to protect your cloud-based workloads, you have to use the CloudPoint additional container that is connected into Netbackup. It allows you to basically natively protect cloud workloads, including EC2, Azure Compute, all from the CloudPoint container. Luckily, fortunately, it is a container. It's very small, and you only need one of them to be able to plug into numerous tenancies and numerous clouds at the same time. And those container snaps can be managed through Netbackup. Now, there is a release coming up on the horizon, and I cannot say what is in that release or talk about it here because I don't think I'm allowed to. But I will say that there will be an event along with that release, as well as feature lists coming out. And I do recommend, Herman, that you check that out when that happens in the next couple of months. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. Wink, wink.
So the answer is stay tuned, wink, wink. I love it.
Yes.
Thank you for answering that question, Anthony. All right.
You got it.
We've talked about prepare, migrate, protect. We have just a few minutes left. You've been waiting to know what the fourth pillar is, and it is optimize. So if you've gone through this entire process, you are successfully deployed in the cloud, and you're wondering what is next, this is where this fourth pillar can really come into play. The journey to the cloud is never a one-way journey, so this is where optimize really comes into play. So first of all, planning efficiently for what comes next. Just because you're in the cloud doesn't mean you want to stay in that specific cloud. Maybe you want to go back on-prem, maybe you want to migrate between clouds. So what does that look like, and making sure you have a plan for the future. The next thing is ensuring what has already been done is sustainable and repeatable with a longer-term strategy. So everything we've talked about up until this point, prepare, migrate, protect, everything in those pillars doesn't stop being relevant just because you've successfully deployed in the cloud. If you need to migrate, everything we talked about with migration comes into play. Having insight into your data and your infrastructure, equally as important. Everything we've talked about is still important regardless of what stage that you're in. Flexibility to move between clouds or back on-prem, we've talked about this a lot, but making sure that you're not locked into any one place, that you have the flexibility and the fluidness to be able to go wherever you want to go, whatever's best for your business. And last but not least, freedom from vendor lock-in. Nobody likes being locked into something they don't want to do, and so making sure that you have the freedom to move to, from, and in between wherever you want to go. So that really speaks to our optimization pillar. To bring it all home, we have this graphic for you that really speaks to the Veritas Enterprise Data Services platform. Anthony did a great job of tying the different products that are in the Veritas Enterprise Data Services platform into each pillar. So what are you getting with EDSP? So when it comes to prepare, you're getting data visibility and integrated operations. That's talking about your data and your infrastructure. When we talk about migration, we're talking about dynamic application and data portability. Again, thinking about near zero downtime, making sure that you have uptime and you're efficient in your migration strategy. When it comes to protect, we're talking about recovery across infrastructures, across your heterogeneous hybrid multi-cloud environment, and near zero downtime when it matters most. And then for optimize, really this is the flexibility to expand and to avoid that lock-in that nobody wants to experience. Anthony, what else do you want to add on this slide?
I mean, you said it earlier, and I think the conversation remains true and is important, regardless of where you are on your journey, whether you're in the preparation, migration, protect stage, or you've knocked out all three. It is important that you continue to think about where are we going to go 1 year from now, or are we going to go 5 years from now? That optimization play is always happening, and there's always a next project. And I just invite you to keep us in the loop as far as conversation goes. We're happy to not only grow along with you, but learn what you're doing and help grow our own solutions to sort of match your direction and speed.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. All right, so that is all we have content-wise. I'm looking at our chat. It looks like we have a couple of questions to answer. So the first one is from Stefan or Steven. I apologize if I'm butchering your name. It says, does your disaster recovery product support UDP multicast? Anthony, any insight into this?
So I saw that question. I don't know if he got responded to offline. I don't know the answer. That's like a deep question. And I used to actually do POCs for VRP back in the day. And I honestly have no clue. So I would love to follow up with you afterwards and find that out for you.
Yeah, we'll definitely follow up on that one. The next question is from Tom. Yeah, good question. So Tom was asking, so is Infoscale like VMware's vMotion, but for cloud? Anthony, what are your thoughts on that?
Yes. So you're kind of hitting the nail on the head. You said vMotion. It's very, very similar. So the same way that you would vMotion a VM from, say, one VMware ESX host to another, so you're kind of keeping it alive, keeping people engaged with it, regardless of where it resides on the journey. Infoscale gives you that same level of functionality, but at the application or server layer. So you can set that up on a physical host or just focused on an application itself. But ideally, and we do have demos of this on the site as well. If you go to the veritas.com/cloud and look up, I believe on the video of two of our architects and experts talking about Infoscale, you can see a live failover of a cluster of AWS Oracle hosts. I think it's a cluster of 8 in real time failing over from one region to another inside of AWS. And it's real time and they don't ever drop connection. So you can maintain connection with those workloads regardless of where they're living and existing at the time. That's a great way to think about it.
All right. This is last call for questions. I am viciously looking at the Q&A window and the chat window to see if we have any other questions that need to be answered. If you are too shy to ask your question, no big deal. The teams are here to help. So please reach out. Here's an email and 2 different phone numbers that you can do to reach out in your region to get more information on anything we've talked about here today. Once again, if you go to veritas.com/cloud, there's a bunch of good information in there for you guys to find. That's also where you can find our Truth in Cloud report. If you search veritas.com for our end user license agreement or our EULA content, that was also referenced. So please feel free to peruse, reach out with any questions. We're happy to help. And once again, for all of those that have stayed throughout the entire presentation, we hope that you've learned something. We hope that you've enjoyed. I know Anthony and I love presenting and love talking to you guys and answering questions.
We do.
But for those of you who have stayed, lunch is on us. Veritas is giving out those $20 Uber Eats e-gift cards. So for all of you who have stayed on the call, check your email within the next 24 hours and you'll get that voucher from us. So thank you all once again from the bottom of my heart, from myself and Anthony. We love talking to you guys, and please reach out with any questions or comments. We love to hear from you. So once again, thank you all, and we'll talk to you next time.
Have a good one. Bye.
Bye, guys.